Greenberg has spent years exploring. In addition to over 2 decades as a professional speaker, Scott spent 10 years as the owner of 2 edible arrangements franchises in Los Angeles. His operation won the Best Customer Service and the Manager of the Year awards out of more than 1,000 locations worldwide. Today, Scott focuses full-time on helping franchises grow their businesses. He's spoken in all 50 states and throughout the world with franchise clients, including McDonald's, GNC, Gold's Gym, and many more. Scott is a contributing writer for Entrepreneur.com, Global Franchise Magazine, and the nation's restaurant news. He is the author of the book, The Wealthy Franchise, published by the Entrepreneur Magazine. He comes to us today from Los Angeles, all the way from Los Angeles, to help us understand what it means to be a wealthy franchise and how to become one. So, Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much. Mr. Khaled, I want to introduce you to 2 franchisees from the same company. The first franchise owner is Anna. Anna has been in the company for about 8 years. She owns 3 locations. One she built herself. The other 2 she bought from other franchisees who were struggling, thought that they had a failed business, but she was able on both occasions to turn them around and make them successful. So now she owns 3 locations. That makes her one of the top franchise business owners in her company. So she sits on her franchise advisory council. She has won the award for Franchisee of the Year. Other franchisees come to her all the time with questions, and she's happy to answer them. But she's not all business. She's the team mom for her son's football team, and she's very active in various clubs and organizations and in her community. She and her husband like to travel and go out to dinner. She is busy, but she lives a very good balanced life, and her businesses enable her to do that. Well, when she went through training 8 years ago, when she bought that first business, she met another new franchise owner, Bob. Now, Bob opened his location in a city almost identical to where Anna built her first location. Same population, the same demographics, the same household income. And he runs the same systems that she does, but he's not getting the same results. Sales haven't been quite what they wanted. He really struggles to find employees. When he finds them, he can't seem to keep them. The customers will often complain about his service that he provides, and he thinks that people are very unreasonable. He blames his franchisor, and he's very angry at them, thinking that they're out of touch and they don't do enough to help him. He thinks it's a failed business model. Now, he knows that Anna is successful, and he's called her a few times to ask her about her secret to success. But when she tells him what she does, he's not very impressed. It's all things that he's already doing. So instead, he calls other franchisees who are struggling and angry, and they just keep reinforcing the same beliefs about how bad the business is. He's thinking about, should he just walk away from the business? Should he borrow money to keep it going? Or perhaps he should give Anna a call to see if she might want to buy it. Knowing Anna, she probably would. So here we have two owners in the exact same franchise system, selling the same products and services. They have the same pricing in similar neighborhoods. They have the same opportunities. They face the same challenges. Their businesses are virtually identical, but the results are completely different. Well, as I'm sure some of you have guessed by now, Anna and Bob are actually composites of the many franchise business owners I've met in so many brands, in so many industries, and in many different countries. Within every franchise brand, you find some owners who are really doing well. They're happy, they're having fun, they're getting wealthy, and other people who are really struggling. Well, today, we're going to talk about why that is, the difference between typical average franchisees and who I call wealthy franchisees. And so whether you're a franchise business owner, someone who's thinking about doing it, or perhaps you're a franchisor who works with franchisees and want to help them, my promise to you this afternoon is that you're going to understand when we're done what it really takes to become a wealthy franchisee so you could become one or help other people become highly successful. Now, first, I want to define what I mean when I say wealthy franchisee. That was the name of my book. That's how I came up with that. And obviously the word wealthy is there as a hook to get people's attention. Khaled, you and I were joking beforehand that if I called the book The Happy Franchisee, I don't know that people would want to read it. People are interested in being wealthy. But in the first chapter of the book, say that again?
Can't agree more.
That's right. So really, my definition of wealthy franchisee is threefold. The first is, yes, you are making money. You've made an investment of time, you've made an investment of money, and the idea is to make more money. Now, how much money you need to be wealthy, it depends on how much you've invested and what your expectations are. But the idea is you feel good about how much money you get to take home. But you could have two franchisees in the same company who are both making a certain amount of money. But if one is earning that money by working 20 hours a week and the other is working 80 hours a week, they're not running the same kinds of businesses. So the second factor to be considered a wealthy franchisee is that you're in control of your time. Your business works for you. You don't work for your business. And when I've learned about these great franchisees who I've met over the years, and I have met them, I've interviewed them, I've written about them, is they are not slaves to the business. They are able to travel and spend time with their families. They can run many businesses. I've talked to a franchisee the other day who owns 80 locations, but he only has 24 hours in his day, just like everyone else. But he manages his time well, and he still has a life. So the idea of being a wealthy franchisee is that you're making good money, but you're also in control of your time. You can always make more money, but you can't get back your time. And then the third characteristic of wealthy franchisees is they enjoy quality of life. They wake up in the morning, they're happy and grateful for the business. Their business helps them enjoy life. So there are many franchisees throughout the world who enjoy all three of these things. It's absolutely possible to have this balance, and that's what our talk this evening is about. The things that wealthy franchisees do that enable them to achieve all three of these. Now, I got into franchising about 16 years ago. I was already doing professional speaking and talking to business leaders about how they can operate at a higher level. But I thought it would help my speaking business if I had my own businesses. I would have more credibility and I could really learn in reality what it takes to succeed. And so for 10 years, I was a multi-unit owner with Edible Arrangements. Now, Edible Arrangements, it's based here in the US, but they're all over the world. And I know that they have a presence in Saudi Arabia. I was in Jeddah once and I actually visited the local store there. So Edible Arrangements, it sells floral arrangements made out of, I'd hire these great employees and they wouldn't show up for work. Well, we'd really strive to provide great service, but sometimes customers would still be unhappy. But we always focused on continuously improving and learning. We got better and better and better. And eventually I started making some pretty good money. And we started winning awards and we had fantastic online reviews. And we eventually ranked as the top location in California. Then I bought a struggling store that was one of the worst in California. And using the concepts we learned from the first one, we turned it around. And within a year, we made it profitable. Well, that gave me the opportunity to start giving presentations to other franchise systems. They knew I was a speaker, but now they knew that I was someone who understood franchising. And part of what I do when a brand brings me in is I interview many of their franchisees. So over the years, I have talked to or surveyed thousands of franchise business owners from a variety of brands, from different industries, and from different countries. And I've seen what all the top people have in common. And so for any franchisee, we could look at their success and narrow it down to three different things. These are the three things that determine what the results are. So the first thing is everything circumstantial, all those outside factors that influence what we're doing. So that would be the economy and the competition. It would be the pandemic, all these things over which we have no control. So what I want to do for a second is I want to pause and I want to give you about 30 seconds. And I want you to ask yourself what you believe are the biggest factors that might impact the business you have or the business that you want. And I want you to start off with everything circumstantial, but then I want you to go on beyond from there. You can either do this mentally or on a piece of paper. Just in 30 seconds, I want you to pause and think about what you believe are all the factors impacting your business, starting with everything circumstantial. So go ahead and make that list. What is everything that could impact your ability to succeed in business? So let's leave it for 30 seconds, and I want you to make that list on paper or mentally. All right, I just wanted to get you started there. So some of the things might be on the list are things that are circumstantial. And what these all have in common is they're out of our control. These are things that franchisees like Bob love to blame and say, it's not my fault, it's because of the pandemic, it's because of the government rules and regulations. They love to blame. And it's not that these outside factors don't impact our business, but they don't tell the whole story. Because even during the pandemic, when many franchise business owners have struggled, there's always franchisees in the same system who've still found a way to be profitable. So what most people focus on is everything operational. These are the systems that we pay the franchisor to teach us. Trying to advance the slide here on my end. There we go. So this is going to be our sales and our marketing and our product line. And it's the way we cook the food, if that's what you're selling, or the way we create the fruit baskets. It's the way you go about changing the oil in cars, if it's a oil change franchise. It's all those things that keep you busy. A lot of people like to focus on everything operational because it's tangible. You can see it and feel it, and that's what they want. They want to know what are the systems and recipes that they need to be successful. Now, obviously, hard work and smart work are very important. And that's why we buy a franchise, is so that someone can teach us what those processes are and hopefully that they've proven them. But if you, again, look at any franchise system, you'll find people who are doing the same work, engaging the same operations in the same circumstances, but getting very different results. And the reason for that is that there is a third factor, but it's one we tend to neglect. It's one that we don't think about because it's less tangible. Sometimes people call it soft skills. It's easy to ignore, and it's easy not to appreciate how powerful it is. But I'm telling you, it's the difference maker. Things like marketing and the right recipes and strategy, these things are important, but they're really not the secret to success. They're just the basics. It's just a prerequisite to succeed. To really be a wealthy franchisee, on top of good operations, you need to master everything human, what you bring to your own business. So that might be your mindset, your ability to bounce back when things get tough and be resilient. It's your level of enthusiasm, your ability to keep a clear head. Your focus not just on the work, but on your purpose, on your mission. It's all those intrapersonal skills, but it's also your interpersonal skills. I've observed that wealthy franchisees work very hard to build a strong, trusting relationship with their franchisor. They understand that managing employees, you have to really inspire them and engage them and motivate them. And they understand how to provide great customer experiences rather than just selling their products and services. These human elements are what separates wealthy franchisees from everyone else. And in my years of doing this research and meeting all these great people, if what I observe they all have in common are the right kinds of locations, well, then I would have written a book about commercial real estate. If what they all have in common is they work the longest hours or they do the most marketing, then that's what I would be talking about with you today. But having met these people, I can tell you what really separates them are the things I mentioned, but what makes them different would be their mindset and the cultures that create. It's these human factors. But again, we tend to neglect them. So if you were to go back to the list of factors that you created that impact businesses, I bet that most of them are circumstantial, and I bet that many of them are operational, thinking doing a lot of marketing and hard work. But I bet not too many of you put things on your list that has to do with you. Very few of you probably wrote my own attitude, my own cynicism, my lack of energy, my enthusiasm. Very rarely do people say, I am the biggest factor that impacts my business. But having worked with these people, I can tell you it really is the secret to becoming a wealthy franchisee. And your franchisor cannot control the human factors. That is completely on you. So let's talk about this in terms of customers before we even talk about ourselves and how to master our own mindset and human factors. We are not just selling to computers, we're selling to human beings. So we want to have influence on our customers. So it's important to understand, how do we have influence? Well, Aristotle addressed this thousands of years ago in a treatise he wrote called Rhetoric. And he identified 3 things that we need in order to be as influential and persuasive as possible. So the first one is logos, which means logic. It's giving people the data and information they need to make a decision. So it might be an automobile commercial that talks about the pricing of the car, the payment options, the features of the car, all the things that we need to know what the car is. So it's basically just giving people information. Then he talked about ethos, which is credibility. Why should I listen to you? So in that same automobile commercial, it might talk about how their car is #1 in its sector. They might talk about awards that they've won and might show famous people who are driving the car. Well, if that famous, credible person is driving it, it must be worth paying attention to. So the logos is the what. The ethos is sort of the why. Why should I listen to you? Why should I believe you? Certainly online reviews would help establish the ethos needed to make people curious. Finally, the third part of the triangle is pathos. And pathos is emotion. The idea is that if I can get you to feel something, I'm more likely to get you to do something. So it's almost telling stories that kind of make people emotional. This is what gets people to buy. It's what gets people to vote. It's what gets people to show up. It's tapping into people's emotions. Now, I gave a live presentation in front of 200 franchise business owners 3 days ago, and I talked about this, and I asked them, if you could only pick one of these things, which do you believe would have the most influence? And I got the same response from that audience that I always get. Across the board, everyone raised their hand when I said pathos, because smart franchise business owners understand that nothing moves consumers more than the way they feel. In economics, they often talk about consumer confidence, not consumer intelligence, consumer confidence. How do people feel about the economy? Because their feelings will drive their spending habits much more than analytics. So what does that mean for us as aspiring wealthy franchisees? It means understanding that our customers are human, and we can't just appeal to their brain. We have to appeal to their heart. Well, we business owners are also human beings, which means that our heart, our emotions are probably impacting our business as well, for better or for worse. So in terms of these 3 factors, here's what it means. Circumstances, we have to be aware of them, but they're out of our control. So where we want to focus is having really strong, tight operations, but equally important, managing these human elements in ourselves and in our teams. So if you only focus on operations and you ignore the human elements, you're going to be mediocre. And if you ignore everything operational and just focus on your attitude and on your humanity, well, you're going to be the happiest poor person there is. These things go together, everything operational and everything human, because these human factors determine how well you execute. So how do we then master the human elements that enable us to become wealthy franchisees? I'm going to give you a few ideas. And as I talk through these things, I want you to really reflect on how these things impact you. Well, one of the first characteristics I noticed about wealthy franchisees is that they're really good at having clarity. They're able to clear their heads. People expect that I'm going to say that wealthy franchisees are very positive and they have a great attitude. And I've learned that that's not necessarily true. I do not advocate positivity or enthusiasm or optimism, because I think a lot of people make some pretty irresponsible decisions just based on faith, based on what they want, what they believe, and not on the actual data. I certainly don't preach negativity. What I preach is clarity, being able to see things as they are, to control your pathos and focus much more on logos, on what the information is. For example, I have a glass of water right here. The optimist would say the glass is half full. The pessimist would say the glass is half empty. The wealthy franchisee says the glass has 120 milliliters of water. It's objective. That's what we want. That's how wealthy franchisees think. It's not that they don't feel emotion. I certainly felt plenty of emotion when I was a franchise business owner. But what I learned is whenever I could stop and take a deep breath and get myself back to a point of clarity, that's when I would make much better decisions rather than knee-jerk reactions and doing things to make me feel better rather than doing things to help grow the business. Now, Khalid, I'm actually running these slides from my laptop computer right now. And my laptop is a perfectly efficient machine. If I press the button on this clicker, it will advance the next slide every single time. What my computer doesn't do is hesitate and think, gosh, I don't know if I have what it takes to advance the next slide. And other computers have much faster processors than I do. And what if my battery runs out? It doesn't have those kinds of human thoughts and fears and emotions. It just does its work. Well, we human beings have a brain, and our brain is much more sophisticated and sometimes problematic. When our buttons get pushed, when we get triggered, we go through a 4-step process. So the first is the triggering event. Could be a drop in sales. It could be the loss of a key employee. It could be a new law or a new policy. It could be a new opportunity. But something triggers those thoughts and emotions. Then our brain interprets it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it pleasurable? Is it painful? We recall previous experiences and we start to assign judgment to it. And the more judgment we assign, the more interpretation, the more subjective we get, getting farther away from our point of clarity. Well, then once that's happened, well, now we have an emotional response to our interpretation. And then we have an action, or usually some kind of reaction, based not on what's best, but on what feels the best. And it might be you're panicking, and so you do something to try to fix the problem, and often it doesn't work. Or maybe you're really excited, enthusiastic, and so you make an impulsive decision based on that enthusiasm. Now, the reason why we do this is because we have an area of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible for our safety and our fight or flight response. So you imagine if you're surprised by a loud sound, a bang or something like that, your brain immediately puts you on high alert. And when you sense danger, you are protecting yourself. You feel the urge to either resist and fight or to run away. Well, the problem with the amygdala is it gets overactive. And when you're using the amygdala, it blocks the neural pathways to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, reason, problem solving, and becoming a wealthy franchisee. Which means when you're emotional, when you're freaking out, you can't access the part of your brain that you need to solve problems. So we need to insert another step into this thinking. We need to disrupt the process by adding reflection. We are willing to stop with the busyness of your business and reflect on yourself. To notice, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And are your thoughts and feelings getting you closer to your point of clarity or farther away? And if you're not coming from a clear place, that's when you need to do whatever it takes to calm yourself down so you can re-access your prefrontal cortex. So some people meditate, some take a deep breath, some talk through their feelings with others. For me, I like to take a walk. Somehow going out in the world, just walking around my neighborhood, it calms me down, it clears my head. I'm able to see solutions that weren't there before because I'm able to use a different part of my brain. So this is really, really important. Our ability to recognize that we are factors in our business. Now, franchisees like Bob won't acknowledge us. He just wants to stay busy. He thinks, yes, my attitude is fine. Yeah, I got a clear head. And he has no idea that his cynicism and his lack of trust and all those thoughts and feelings he's not even aware he's experiencing are impacting his decisions. They're limiting his ability to really connect with employees. He just wants to manage their work rather than elevate them. He just wants to facilitate transactions with customers rather than to elevate the experience and have them, enjoy experience that makes them want more, makes them want to talk and post about the business. So wealthy franchisees, I've observed, are very self-aware. They don't just look outward at the business, they look inward at themselves to get their emotions in control to make sure that they are assets to their business. So it's really important that we are able to keep a clear head. So here's what I'd like all of you to do right now. And again, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to take a moment and reflect on your own thinking, including your thinking right now as you have been watching and listening to this presentation. What are you thinking and feeling? Are you feeling enthusiastic? Are you feeling critical? Are you feeling doubtful? What are the thoughts and emotions that are going through your head? What is the inner dialogue? And I want you to think about how is that impacting your ability to keep an open mind and just listen. So just take a moment right now to reflect on that and ask yourself how often you have these kinds of thoughts distracting you from what's happening right there in the moment. All right, so it's just something to be aware of. We might be able to, when we do Q&A, we might be able to kind of reflect on this a little bit and hear what some things that people are thinking and feeling. But just be aware that your thoughts and your emotions directly impact your business as much as marketing, as much as sales, as much as your operations. So the better you get at looking inward and getting yourself back to your point of clarity, the more quickly you can get on the path to becoming a wealthy franchisee.
Mr. Scott?
I've looked.
I just want
Say
to
that again?
remind, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to remind the crowd, whoever is attending the presentation, if you have any questions, please pass them through the Q&A so that we can address them with Mr. Scott at the end of the presentation. Just want to remind them. Thank you so much.
Sure. Khalid, one of the other things that I've observed is wealthy franchisees, they don't just manage their head, they're really good at managing their time. They're different than other franchisees. Most franchisees suffer from busyness. They think that just because they're in motion, working hard, they're making progress. But the truth is activity is not the same thing as productivity. You know, we can invest money and the money might come back to us and might disappear. You can always make more money. But time is an account from which we only make withdrawals. You will never get back your time investment. And so you want to be very, very deliberate about how you spend your time. Now, if you spend all your time practicing violin 10 hours a day, you will get good at playing the violin. If you spend 10 hours a day gardening, you're going to get really good at gardening, but you're not going to get really good at practicing the violin. Well, every business owner every day makes a choice as to how they're going to invest their time, and that determines what return they're going to get from their efforts in the business. So what I've learned is there's two different types of tasks that take up our time running our business. There's everything operational, all the daily tasks that are necessary to run a business, such as these kinds of things here. But then there are growth tasks. These are not so much about running the business, but growing the business. You know, things like marketing or coaching employees. It's the bigger things that enable a business to grow. Now, all these tasks are very important, but the question is, should they be performed by you or should they be delegated to others? Now, even though these things need to get done, I don't believe the things in box A should be done by the franchise business owner. These are things you can pay other people to do. So what I encourage business owners to do is to make a list of every task that takes up their time, to plot it on a grid like this, and notice what is in box A. What are the operational tasks that you are performing? You're better off paying other people to do this. Yes, there's a financial cost of delegating it, but what you get back in box A is time. More time to put in box B. So that time investment actually yields you more time, the same way a good financial investment yields more money. So now you can spend more time in box B doing the things that grow businesses. One of the biggest limitations I see of mediocre business owners like Bob is Bob wants to do everything himself. He doesn't think other people can do it. He doesn't trust his employees, and he believes he's saving money by doing it himself and not paying employees. But the cost of that savings is time. He doesn't have time to spend in box B. Anna spends a lot of time in box B, and she coaches other people, and which is part of box B, to do the things that were in box A so she doesn't have to. And what Anna's done, the reason why she's able to own 3 locations and still have a life is because she's trained managers to do everything in box B, and she delegates that. That gives her more time for quality of life or to expand and grow businesses. So the idea is when you're running your business or living your life, make a list of everything that is taking your time. Notice the things that could be delegated to others and go ahead and do that and pay them to do it to give you the time to do things that are more valuable. So I don't want to spend too much time on that because my time and your time is valuable, but just understand that just as you would be very careful about how you might invest money, equally important is how you invest your time. You can spend time running a business or spend time growing the business. And so 10 years from now, what will you look back and wish you invested more in? Most people would say growing the business because that's how you become a wealthy franchisee. So you want to make sure that you treasure your time. So far we've talked about your internal experience of running your business, really controlling your mind and controlling the choices you make in terms of how you spend your time. But let's expand out now and talk about our teams and talk about those around us and the organizations of which we are a part. So Bob, when he looks at his business, he just focuses on everything operational. He just focuses on building the business. But Anna's more sophisticated. She understands these human elements are important. So she also focuses on building a culture. When you have any kind of business, but especially a franchise, you are building a culture, whether you realize it or not. Wealthy franchisees are very deliberate about building a culture. They're very concerned about what are the relationships like among their team members. They make sure they focus on having a mission and having values. It's not just what they do, but who do they want to be? How do they want to interact? As opposed to just, what are we selling? Bob focuses on just training employees to work. Anna concerns herself with building a team where there's loyalty, where people care, where they almost feel like it's her own business. And please understand, again, every business has a culture. And if you don't design it on purpose, it's just going to become what it becomes by default. And very often it becomes toxic. Bob struggles with his employees because he doesn't take time to build a culture. He just trains them on their work, but doesn't train them on how to interact. So we need to talk about what does it actually mean to build a culture and what is a culture? So culture is less what people do, and it's more about how they act together. We talk a lot about branding, right? What is a brand? A brand is how a company or a business feels to the outside world. It's their emotional perception of what that company is. Well, culture is how a company feels on the inside to members of that organization, to employees of that company. And what I've learned is the better the culture is within an organization, the better the brand appears on the outside, because those people are the ones who are providing the experience. So once again, it requires taking time out from busyness to talk to your employees, to make sure when you hire them, you're not just looking at their skill set, but you're also looking at their mindset. Do they have the attitude, the resilience that fit for your team? Do they share the same values that match your business? At Edible Arrangements, I was very clear about the values my business could honor. If you cared about family, we cared about family. So I would let my employees leave because they had a family function or an appointment, something like that. And we would have gatherings and picnics to bring families together because I knew that they would like that. If you valued personal growth, I love to talk to my employees about how they can be not just better employees, but better people. If they valued education, they were not happy. I personally value education, but what I learned is people who had college degrees or really liked that kind of learning, they didn't do well as employees for me because the work was too monotonous for them. So they didn't last very long. So why I think education is important, it wasn't a value that was aligned with our business. So when I was hiring people, if I sensed that was important to them, I knew it wouldn't work. So what are the values of your business and what are not your values? So being deliberate about that and then making sure that everyone is on the same page. Then it's about training them to interact in a way where they care about each other, where they care about the mission of the business. But for Bob, that is not something he thinks about because he doesn't have a mission. He just wants to sell stuff and make money. Anna wants to make a difference in her community. She believes that her products and services and her relationships with people can make the world better. And in the process of making the world better, she's able to get wealthy. She's able to sell more and have a stronger business. Across the board, I observe that wealthy franchisees think beyond their own wealth, and they hire employees who are part of that. So we want to be very deliberate about building a culture that promotes this kind of unity. Now, a lot of people think that building a culture just means being nice to employees or paying them well. I had a franchisee come to me for coaching and she says, I don't know what to do. I buy them gift cards and I buy them food. I say, thank you. I tell them good job. And I said, that's nice, but being nice is just being nice. It's not building culture. So what are the elements of culture? It's really two things that we have to be very deliberate on. The first is beliefs. When people have the same beliefs, they tend to bond together. And you can think of all the different areas of our life where we have beliefs. You know, it could be political or religious or your favorite sports teams, your beliefs about what's true. More important, it's your beliefs about what's important. And that comes down to your values. Your values are just a reflection of your beliefs about what is important. So you want to recruit people who have similar beliefs about business and about human interaction, and then you want to reinforce it. So you're not just training them in the job, you're training them in the culture by saying, these are our values of our business. This is what we stand for. And this is our philosophy about serving customers. This is why we're here, giving people a strong sense of why. So really focuses around the values. But it's not enough to have a mission statement and have values. What's then important is to have rituals that reinforce the values, rituals that reinforce the beliefs. You know, in society, we have all kinds of rituals that reinforce beliefs. It might be holidays that we celebrate or foods that we eat. It might be just certain festivals that we have. It's these things that we repeat. It's the way, you know, we go about celebrating birthdays or births or deaths or all these occasions in life. And we have these rituals. It connects us with other people who buy into the same rituals. Well, for businesses, we can create rituals that reinforce the beliefs so our employees never forget. One of the most famous brands worldwide that it's known for providing an exceptional customer experience is Ritz-Carlton. And one of the reasons Ritz-Carlton is so successful in providing an incredible experience for guests is because the rituals and the cultures that they build among their employees. So they are all about service, and the way they reinforce that is a ritual they have called the stand-up meeting. So every single day, every employee at Ritz-Carlton worldwide at every property, they get pulled off of their work for 20 minutes just for their department they work in their shift. And the supervisor takes them through this shift stand-up meeting, and they'll talk for a few minutes about what's happening on the property, but then they talk about their values. Every employee reaches in their pocket and they pull out what's called their credo card. In this card, it states the credo and the mission of the company and its values, and every employee recites the credo, and then they'll read a story about some employee worldwide who acted on whatever value they're talking about that day. Every employee goes through the same meeting throughout the entire world, every shift, every day. And I once had an opportunity to watch one of these, and I asked the employees, I said, does this really make a difference for you every day? And they said, well, some days more than others, but they never forget their purpose, their why, and that keeps them really focused on each other and on providing an exceptional customer experience. Recently, I gave a presentation for a Mexican food chain here in the States called Qdoba. And one of their top franchisees has Wednesday family night, where they close the restaurant a little bit early and they have a potluck. Every employee brings food and they all share it. Now, once in a while, the owner might buy food, but by people bringing their own food, they're sharing something of themselves. And the owner told me employees love it. They ask to be scheduled Wednesday afternoons, so they're already there because they love being a part of this meeting. That ritual makes a big difference. Another franchise brand I talked to, they have all their franchisees every day begin with their employees with a morning meeting where they talk about the values of the company and the mission every single day. And this company does great and they make all kinds of money. And they all tell me that by focusing so much on the culture and having rituals that reinforce the mission, they never forget. Bob would never do this. Bob just wants to get busy. Bob just wants to market and start selling stuff. The idea of talking about values and rituals and having these conversations, he's not interested in that stuff. He calls it soft skills. He thinks it's a waste of time. So when he calls Anna, he doesn't ask, what do you do to build a great culture? He just says, where do you find good employees? What are you doing for marketing? All of his questions are about everything operational. But she's doing the same things. But what she's doing differently that he's ignoring would be her attempts to truly build culture. Well, culture is an important ingredient in this recipe of success. So if you want to replicate wealthy franchisees, you can't just do some of what they're doing. You have to do all of what they're doing. And a big part of what they do, in addition to building great businesses, is building great cultures. So whether you have a business or are thinking about one, or whether you're trying to raise a family, the more you can get people on the same page in terms of beliefs, and then have rituals that reinforce the beliefs, the more they're going to feel that they're part of something. They're going to have a higher sense of purpose, and you're going to have a culture that is set up for success, whatever that means to you. So that is a huge part of leading a business. So we've talked about what's going on for you internally and externally with the culture around you. Finally, we're going to talk about the customer, and that's who it's all about. And the secret to customer service is really understanding that you are providing not just a product or service, but an experience. And an experience is something very different. I recently bought my wife concert tickets to see the Rolling Stones. They're coming here to Los Angeles next month. And I told a friend and they said, why would you spend that much money when you can just, listen to the music, just hit play and listen to the music? And the reason is because listening to music on a speaker and being there with the crowd and people are completely different things. For human beings who experience pathos, experience matters. Now, Bob does not get this because he only thinks operationally. Bob just thinks about what the customer gets. But Anna also thinks about how the customer feels. Remember, we're not computers, we're human beings who experience pathos. And what she's learned is that if in the delivery of her products and services, she can also elevate people's emotional states, they're going to remember her, they're going to talk about her, and they're going to come back for more. Again, Bob doesn't think this way. He's too busy being busy. He'd rather take the customer's money, give them the product, and then he says next in line, and he thinks that that's good enough. Not if you want to become a wealthy franchisee. All these things we're doing are about creating a better experience for our employees, but definitely a better experience for our customers. And part of that means understanding of what business we're really in. Now, some of you think, well, that's confusing. I mean, I'm in the ice cream business. I'm in the pest control business. I'm in the fruit basket business. I thought at Edible Arrangements, I was in the fruit basket business. That was the product that we sold. But if people would call and they were say, they were having special occasions, anniversaries and birthdays or the birth of a new child, and they would send a basket to commemorate that. And one day I realized, wait a second, I'm not just in the fruit basket business, I'm in the celebration business. We exist to help people celebrate the important occasions in their lives. When I talked about that with my employees, they got a little excited. They got proud. They weren't just selling baskets. They were helping people celebrate special occasions. But it also changed our conversations. We'd ask, what is the occasion? And then we talk about it with them. And then we would say, how important is this? How much do you want to wow the other person? And by celebrating with them, it increased our ticket average and we made more money. I also realized that people kept saying, no, you're going to make sure that the basket gets there on time, right? They were nervous that we weren't going to get the basket where and when it needed to be there. So I realized we're also in the reassurance business. Celebration is one emotion they're chasing, whether they realize it or not, but reassurance is the other one. So I trained my employees to say, don't worry, I'm going to make sure it gets there. And then when it got there, we would call the sender and say, hey, it got there today at 2:00 and she was crying because she was so happy. Our customers love this. My franchisor didn't train us to do it. We figured it out on our own because unlike Bob, who would think he's in the fruit basket business, we're in the celebration business and the reassurance business. Every business out there serves at two different levels. There's the thing that customers want, product or service. There's also the emotion that they're chasing. And no one's going to walk into your business and say, I want you to make me happy, or I need you to reassure me. They're really going to focus on the operational piece, on the thing. But subconsciously, all of us want to feel better. And if doing business with you elevates their emotions, that's going to build loyalty. They're going to remember that because remember, pathos, emotions more than anything else influences our decisions. Now, a lot of people say, well, my approach to customer service is treat people the way I want to be treated, what's known as the golden rule. I reject the golden rule. Don't treat people the way you want to be treated because you have different values than your customers, because you have different preferences, different needs. You're in a different mood. If you do things the way you want, you might not be honoring what they want. I once went to a nursery to buy some plants for the house. I was running many errands and I was in a really big hurry. And the gentleman who was serving me didn't pick up on that. He kept making jokes. In his mind, he thought buying plants should be fun. That was his value. And it's not that I don't appreciate fun or humor, but not that day. I was in a hurry. I needed speed and efficiency. But he kept making jokes and they weren't funny. And finally he says to me, wow, sir, you're very serious. So now he's giving me feedback on my mood, which only made my mood worse. He treated me the way he wanted to be treated. He should have treated me the way I wanted to be treated. So if he observes that I'm very serious, then he should be serious with me. So the idea here behind creating a great experience is to really pay attention to your guests and to your customers and think about what is it that they want, not just the product or service, but what kind of experience do they want? What is the emotion best for this customer? And the more you can do that and focus on that and train your employees to do it, they're going to remember you, they're going to talk about you, and they're going to come back for more. So really what I'm trying to help everyone who is watching this understand is that business can't just be about transactions. Marketing isn't just about advertising. You also need patience and faith. And managing employees can't just be about directing their work. It has to be also about elevating them and inspiring them and engaging them and helping them feel connected. And customer experience can't just be about selling of products and services and transactions. It all has to be about emotions and elevating the way they feel. Bob doesn't get this. Anna does, and that's the reason why she is a wealthy franchisee. So I guess my main message for you today, and my charge to you, and we'll take questions here in just a moment, is to think about whether you have a business or you want to get into business, or you're a franchisor elevating other people who are running businesses. Just selling things, operations, they're not enough. Circumstances are things we don't control. But these human factors, the way we think, the way we lead, and the way we serve, these things are completely under your control. And these are the things that all wealthy franchisees have in common. So master the human sides of who you are and the business you run. And when you infuse that into really good, solid operations, that is when things are really going to start to happen for you. And that is when you're going to become a wealthy franchisee. And if I could be of help, I would love to do that. I obviously have the book, which is available. There's also an audio book or an e-version available wherever books are sold. Information on me, what I do is at scottgreenberg.com. And I also have an online course where I guide people through the process of taking their business to the next level. And information there is on thewealthyfranchisee.com. And you can also follow me on social media. But it's been such a pleasure. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Mr. Scott, that was indeed a very wealthy presentation with a lot of great insights. So thank you so much. I have a couple of questions here lined up for you. So the first one is, what should I look for in choosing a good franchise?
It's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. So we've talked about the operational piece and the human piece. And so I would start there. So first of all, operations. Is it a business that is viable? Are other people making money doing it? And has the company proven its success, not just once or twice, but several times in different markets, in different places? If they've run a few, but all in the same region, well, we don't really know then if they can really replicate the success. They might have gotten lucky with one or two. So you want to make sure it's a solid operation, that it's making money, and it's something that you would enjoy doing. That's the really operational piece. But the human piece, what I think is critical to look at when evaluating a franchise is the culture of the company. How do franchisees and franchisors get along? Do the different franchisees, do they talk and help each other, or are they competitive, which I see quite a bit? The more healthy the culture is, the better the business opportunity is. And so you want to ask questions. What does the company do to unify franchisees? And how does the company handle conflict when franchisees and franchisor don't always agree? You want to try to get a sense of what is the culture to really know if it's a sophisticated company that's going to help you make money.
Cool. Thank you so much. The second question, and we'll come back to the culture piece again between the franchisee and the franchisor. The second question, Mr. Scott, that was I found this a very interesting question myself. Mr. Scott, have you always felt good about running a franchise? In other words, can you tell us more about your mental state running a franchise?
Yeah, in a word, no. For 10 years, my emotions were like this. It was a roller coaster. There were days when employees had a great attitude and they were showing up and customers were coming and the money was flowing in and I wanted to throw my fists up in the air with victory. And then there were days where the money wasn't coming in and I couldn't explain why customers weren't calling or coming in, but what continued to come in were the bills. And I started stressing out about what bills I could pay and what bills I could not pay. There were times when even we did had the best leadership possible where suddenly employee performance would go down or employee wouldn't show up. There were always issues and there were problems. Sometimes we might disagree with our franchisor. Sometimes the last year I owned the businesses, we got 3 bad online reviews. And the reason is because another Edible Arrangements that I didn't own was doing a terrible job and the customers didn't realize there's a difference in locations. So they posted the bad reviews on mine, something completely out of my control. So I would tell you, I didn't just run that business, I felt that business. But the more self-aware I was, the more quickly I could get back to my point of clarity, learn to make smarter decisions. But I was no superhero. I got nervous. I freaked out on the good days, on bad days. And sometimes on good days, I got a little too excited and I made some pretty bad decisions based just on enthusiasm and not on data. So some ways I might be more of a cautionary tale. I mean, we made money and we, won awards, and I made money when I sold the businesses, but there were days where I was definitely imperfect.
Emotional roller coaster indeed, sir. Next question is about actually the pandemic. In light of the pandemic and all the impact it has been doing on all, I would say, frontiers of the economy, do you think the pandemic would have a leveraging factor in terms of the helping franchisors selling franchise rights, or it's the other way around?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. I want to make sure I understand the question about the pandemic.
No worries. Let me rephrase the question. Would you say that the pandemic has a positive impact on the franchise landscape globally or not?
I would say yes and no. It all depends on
why
how.
Is yes? Yeah.
I'll explain both. Obviously, the pandemic is a terrible thing that people are getting sick and people are dying. Businesses closing. That part is terrible. But there's always going to be changing circumstances. If it's not a pandemic, it's a changing economy, or it could be the global political. There's always things that are happening. So in the beginning, many people panic and they make knee-jerk reactions. But invariably, people start to think and they get creative and they start to pivot. The home services industry, so franchises that are about helping people improve their homes, whether it's redesigning their garages or pest control or remodeling their kitchens. All those businesses initially had a drop in business, and then all of them had their best years yet because people were at home and they cared more about what was happening at home. A lot of restaurants initially closed, had a difficult time, but those restaurants who really invested in delivery and in takeaway and in other ways of doing things, they were able to find opportunities. And I know here in California, right now, restaurants are back open to full capacity, starting to close because of the Delta variant. But one restaurant I used to go to a lot, they're supposedly at full capacity, but when you go there, it's quiet. Why? Because now most of their business is delivery. So those businesses who are able to adapt and who are able to change and accommodate the new circumstances have actually found the opportunities. And I will tell you, even for me as a public speaker, 2020 was a very difficult year because all my speaking engagements got canceled. But then I started pushing hard on doing virtual presentations like this. This year will be my best year ever. I booked some live things, but I also created that online course for franchisees. But I also started focusing on building this studio and doing virtual presentations. 2 years ago, unless I flew to Saudi Arabia, which I've done once before, but it's less likely I'll be hired to do that. But it's much easier for this to happen. So I think globally, I think some franchises have fared very well, depending on circumstances are favorable, but also how do they change and how do they pivot? Those who could do that quickly, those who stopped panicking and got to work, got themselves to a point of clarity and started innovating, they're the ones who are able to thrive. And so from a physical standpoint, medically, the pandemic is horrible. Business-wise, I think we need to stop judging it and just say, things aren't necessarily better or worse, they're different. Whether they're better or worse depends on how we respond to it.
Mm-hmm. It all comes down to the point of clarity that you continuously talked about during the presentation, which I find very profoundly right. Moving, and we, by the way, we would like to welcome you again, hopefully in Saudi very soon, inshallah.
I would love to come back.
Thank you. The next question is actually about the pathos part that you talked about in the presentation. The guy who was asking the question said, when a brand is a promise, this is very much related to the pathos part, that what you're trying to sell to the customer as an experience. Let's say if I'm a franchisor who understands this very well, and I'm trying to, I would say, pass the torch to these franchisees, and these franchisees I would say, wouldn't successfully simulate the same experience to these to the customers. What should we do then?
So very good question. And it might be one of the biggest frustrations in the franchise industry, where the franchisor understands how important customer experience is, but then finds that franchisees aren't delivering that experience. And there are a couple of reasons why that happens. Number one, the franchisor didn't do a good job in choosing franchisees. They just sold the business to anybody who had enough money and didn't really vet them culturally to make sure that that franchisee bought into the beliefs and the value system and the mission of the business. The second thing that often happens is maybe they do, but the company spends all their time just focusing and training on operations and spends very little on these human things. So, there's one company I worked with not long ago, and they have this whole packet they send out on customer experience. But when you read it, it's operational. It's really not about the emotional side. And so it has to be part of your recruiting of franchisees, but then it has to be part of your training, really articulating the difference between a transaction and an experience. They must be trained on it, as important as learning how to use the computer system or how to create the product or service that you're selling. If you already have franchisees who are there, they've already been trained and they're mediocre, they're not doing a good job, well, now you need to start focusing on those who are doing a good job and talk about them and highlight them and point out how they're getting wealthy by doing it and giving that feedback to current franchisees and say, hey, there's an opportunity for you to take your sales to a whole other level. But for that to happen, it's not enough to market. You also need to provide a different kind of experience, and here's how to do it. They need that feedback and they need the training. And they might need it over and over and over again. But if you really make a good argument, show how other people are making money, challenge them to get better online reviews, eventually over time, they start to see it. But it's so important, and you just got to invest more time in it.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. I have a couple of questions more, but I'm not sure we have the time. Let me ask this question. I think it's super important. One of the attendees asked about this. So most of the principles Mr. Greenberg talked about today is about service-oriented ventures. Let's say if it's, I would say a manufacturing franchise, or I would say other, I would say less service-oriented franchises. Would the same principles apply, and why?
Absolutely. Okay. There are so many people in the franchise world who believe that maybe there's something about their business, their model, that's different. We are human beings. And if you're an individual human being, your thoughts and emotions are impacting what you do. And if you're interacting with anyone else, an employee, another franchisee, and obviously a customer, these things are there. So I have a company I'll be working with next month. I'll be presenting to a company that's a business-to-business concept. They sell auto parts to their clients. They don't have customers who walk in. They sell auto parts to dealerships and mechanics, that kind of thing. But those people, whoever's are buying what they're selling, they have emotional needs. It might be consistency. It might be that they loyalty. They want to have a good relationship. They want to have reliability. There are always emotions when there's human interaction. And it doesn't mean we need to spend a lot of time and we need to be hugging and becoming best friends, but to always ask, what are the human elements that are part of this experience? You can think of a doctor whose job it is to heal, but if that doctor is talking to the patient, there's something called bedside manner, because that patient is feeling emotions, they are reacting. And so even if it's manufacturing, there are people who have needs, people who have wants, people who are experiencing stress, people who experience joy. So the question is, if you're manufacturing for someone, how can you manufacture and deliver the product in a way that makes them feel good? If you answer that question, you're going to outdo the competition every single time.
Perfect. I think I have time for one more question. And I apologize for the people who sent questions that we didn't address today. I'm very much apologetic for this. My question is, my next question is about the rituals part. You said it's very important to build a culture and pass on the rituals of the brand. but Mr. Scott did not highlight any, I would say, catering to the differences between cultures. That whatever works in Saudi Arabia, for example, wouldn't work in the States and vice versa. So how would you cater for these cultural differences while maintaining the rituals? That's the question.
Well, certainly at this point, it would be inappropriate for me to tell you how to elevate the emotions of employees in Saudi Arabia, having not spent time there. I would love to spend enough time there at some point to understand that. I'm much more qualified to speak on that here in the United States. But all of you in Saudi Arabia, you know your culture. You know how people think and feel, how you think and feel, and you might have a better idea of what kind of experience elevates people's emotions. So in Saudi Arabia, culturally, there might be different triggers for people's emotions. There might be a different value system, but there's still a value system. So the question is, what are the values your business can operate? What are the values that you want to have your business wrap around? And how can you find employees and remind them of those values? And so you just have to adapt it. So the difference between the US and Saudi Arabia might be what our values are and what your values are, but you still have values. So the idea is within your business is to create a culture wrapped around the values that are appropriate there, whether it's for your employees or whether it's for your customers. Just to understand you're human beings as well that are driven by pathos, driven by emotion, even if they're different emotions, different desires and needs. Identify what those things are, and then build rituals around that to reinforce the beliefs and the values that you want to honor.
Well, case in point, I guess, sir. Thank you so much for being part of our event today. It has been utterly a great pleasure and an honor to have you today. And looking forward to welcome you again in Saudi in the near future. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
العامة للمنشآت الصغيرة
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حياكم الله جميعا. نرحب بكم في
We would like to welcome you all to the second interactive market for franchise, which is organized by Monshaat, with a view to organize the market and develop it in order to connect entrepreneurs with franchisers and those who are willing to receive franchise, with the participation of stakeholders and legal advisory entities and a group of entities that provide a lot of support in order to provide an integrated ecosystem of investment from 14 to 16th of September on the online platform from 1 to 6 p.m., in which a lot of the decision makers in the franchise market participate. We have 3 awareness workshops on franchise and 3 workshops for the participation of 40 brands. This is a great advancement, and these are part of the number of brands incubated by Monshaat. We now have one of the funders, which is the Development Fund, and we have many advisory on governmental entities. His Excellency, the Governor of the Authority, is Engineer Abu Osama Al-Rashid, will deliver his speech. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praises is Allah. In the beginning, I would like to welcome you all in the opening ceremony of the interactive market for franchise in its second version, as mentioned by my brother Mansour, for 3 days, in which we have more than 40 brands, in addition to many governmental and funding entities, in addition to legal offices and advisory offices. We ask Allah the Almighty that it will be beneficial and that we will reap the fruits of this interactive market with many franchisors and franchisees. I'd like to thank Mr. Ibrahim Rashid and the Social Development Fund for being a partner with Monshaat in order to fund and provide a lot of initiatives. And he is a good supporter for the launch of this basic principle. I'd like also to thank Mr. Majid Al-Khair, being the chair of the committee related to developing and monitoring the franchise initiative. The committee, including the private sector, is fully supporting this project because it is considered a big project, and we ask Allah the Almighty that it will be beneficial for all of us. We all know franchise is considered a milestone in the development of SMEs. We know that we have small and medium enterprises that was started in Saudi Arabia, and now they are international and they started in a franchise. Many owners now attract the brands for franchise. Now we have 599 brands in the Saudi market that were attracted from different kinds of international brands. For example, but not limited to, McDonald's, Starbucks, how they are spread in many countries all over the world by franchise principles. We hope that we see Saudi brands that can reach in the future international market. The interactive market and the franchise center, today we are working on main interventions that are very important. First, supporting the transformation of international brands into franchising. Two, attracting new brands in new and promising sectors. And we know that in the 2030 vision of Saudi Arabia, we are focusing on new brands. We also support franchisors to provide even partial franchising. Also, promoting and enhancing Saudi businessmen to provide franchising instead of starting a new business, which will lower the risk. Also, we work on facilitating things for the franchisees. We have started new governmental program with the Social Development Fund, and my colleagues will explain the details. We also work on launching many programs up front from the banks in order to support the franchise system. Our ceremony today, our event, is within a series of interventions provided by the franchise center. The interactive market is for a specific period of time, but the center is there for all the time. Currently, we have in the platform of the franchise center more than 300 commercial brands and more than 5,000 applications were received from entrepreneurs in order to receive the franchise. This indicates the volume of the market and the willingness to develop this basic concept in the Saudi business atmosphere. In the recent times, we have signed more than 144 franchise agreements in the year 2020, and we expect that the number will increase, especially that recently we have launched a specific regulation related to the mediation in the franchise system. We see continuous support for franchise. We will pay much attention to it in the coming future. So if you're a consultancy company, legal entities, governmental entities, do not save any effort to provide us with any kind of support or program to develop this sector. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank our primary partners, starting with Abu Hamad, Mr. Ibrahim Rashid, the CEO of the Social Development Fund, and His Excellency Majid Al Hakir, the CEO of the Franchise Center, for being with us today, for their support in this initiative that reached high levels of interactivity and excellence. And we hope in the coming few years that the franchise sector system in Saudi Arabia will be in a different form, in a better form, in a unified direction towards the realization of the Vision 2030 of the Kingdom. Thank you very much. And I ask Allah the Almighty to provide us support in all what we do. Thank you very much, and peace be upon you all. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Engineer Saleh, the Governor of Monshaat Authority. We'd like to start our meeting. Now we have our guest, His Excellency Mr. Ibrahim bin Hamad Al Rashid, the head of the Social Development Bank, and we have Mr. Majid Abdul Mahmoud Hakir, the head of the Board of Directors of Hakir Group and the head of the Franchise Center in Monshaat. We have a number of teams, and it is our pleasure to tell you that these teams will be tackled in rotation between all of you. Starting with Mr. Majid Al Hakir, if you have an introduction, a short introduction regarding the first theme, which is the importance of franchise internationally and nationally as well. The floor is yours, Mr. Majid. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'd like to thank all my brothers. I'd like to, in this meeting, I was honored to receive the initiative of Mr. Saleh to be chairing the franchise committee. So I did not expect this kind of organizations and the existing laws and regulations, a lot of things that we did not expect to be having.
والحمد لله يعني قاطعين شوط كبير في هذا المجال.
All praise to Allah, we have taken good steps towards that direction, and we came from the private sector in order to act proactively to support this sector, because we in the private sector believe in its feasibility. I will not say more than what Mr. Saleh has mentioned in terms of the importance of franchise and the current transformation in the Saudi market and the appetite that we are witnessing towards the franchise and the studies that were conducted by the franchise authority in terms of international studies, local studies, so that we can achieve what some countries have achieved in that matter, representing the high percentage of the NGDP of the country. So we will not imitate countries like America or other countries that were starting maybe tens or hundreds of years before, but we are speaking about some countries that are similar to the Saudi market. We're speaking about percentages that may reach the percentages of these countries, and it is expected from Saudi Arabia markets to reach these numbers. In terms of the incentives, there are incentives. The developed laws and regulations are do exist, and we have a record The franchise center that facilitates laws, regulations, and advisory. All this exists, and as mentioned, the franchise center is existing, and the support is there. The cadres are there. All of this makes us optimistic, especially for the entrepreneurs from one side and also through the Saudi companies from the other side that will be working in the franchise system in order to provide this motivational uh, environment and a work market that is protective and also supportive. We'd like also to remember that our colleagues in Monshaat Authority provided the laws and regulations to protect beneficiaries of both sides in order to develop and to receive their feedback. So there were a number of feedback systems, and we hope that in the coming future we will all work together in order to improve things through the Monshaat Authority and the franchise center or through the committee representing the private sector. Thank you, Mr. Majid. Maybe now, Your Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim Al-Rashid, if you can introduce us to the bank in a short introduction and the relation between the bank and the Munshaat Authority. Peace be upon you all. Thank you, Brother Mansour, for moderating this. And I'm sure that with your experience, you're more than capable of doing so.
سعادة المحافظ وعلى أخي ماجد الحكير. الامتياز التجاري موضوع نشط جدا في
Franchise is an active thing currently in these years, and there are good efforts that are being provided by Monshaat to transform and to translate this ambition and aspiration into reality and to expand it in Saudi Arabia, because it is a very important thing for the emerging enterprises. This session is very important and it is excellent, and it is good that
على الإبداع. شكرا على التفاعل الكبير اللي احنا شفناه كجهة تمويل من قبل
for providing us with this session. In terms of our bank, we coordinate the funding in terms of franchisees and franchisors for our young men and women who are interested. The bank now reached the more than 47 international grants that are available for our children and sons and daughters. We signed more than 79 contracts for young men and women who started using this model of business. And I think the coming period will be very decisive in terms of franchising, and COVID-19 provides an accelerating, faster route to reach, and also this franchise provides a faster lane to reach the market and the customers. The bank provides many solutions for financing. We finance more than 29,000 SMEs with more than 7 billion riyals worth, and with the efforts provided and the integration with all governmental entities, starting with Monshaat, I'd like to provide good omens that today we are providing an average of 17 contracts on a daily basis this year. And God willing, this year will be like the previous year, in which we had a double support from the government of the custody of the Holy Mosque and the Crown, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, in which we found more than 18 billion riyals, and we will have the same kind of support this year, which is an additional double budget because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy and trying to save what could be saved. The development bank, with many other support programs for the franchise, hand in hand with Monshaat, we are interested in providing direct, immediate support, which is facilitated and easy for customers, because the risks in franchise are less than starting their own enterprise directly. We also work on making sure with the franchisor that they will provide a business model that is ready, an identity that is ready, and they will train the franchisees, the young men and women that are going to open the business. They will try them, enabling them with all necessary tools to enter the labor market with all confidence and strength. After that, young men and women, after having this experience, they can expand their work, whether with the same brand or other brands, or even with their own business model or their own brand. I'm happy to be here, and we have more than one team, and the moderation will be for my. Thank you very much, Constantine, Mr. Ibrahim, Mr. Muhammad. I would like to benefit from the experience of Mr. Majid, being the chair of the franchise committee. Can you tell us about the role of franchise in the commercial movement, and if there are any successful stories for young men and women nationally and internationally? Thank you very much, Mr. Mansour. I think that what is being provided now by the franchise in terms of services, we are in the supervisory or the advisory committee. We represent the private sector, and we now work on inviting many Saudi companies in different sectors. Maybe if you notice, and everybody notices that we enterprises only focused on the food and beverages and general cooking. So in the committee, we try to expand the scope to call for more diversity, as mentioned by Mr. Saleh Abu Usama, that we are now inviting for new types and kinds of franchise, like the automation, electronic platform services, electronic e-commerce services, and also, along with my colleagues in the company, we work on diversifying the kinds of franchises. They are limited to food and beverages, kinds of products. So we would like that many hope that we know that the country now is fighting many things like commercial coverage and other problems that are in supermarkets, mini markets, shops, barber shop, laundry shops, and other small enterprises. So we are working on encouraging some of the commercial banks and people who are in charge of this to have franchise for these kinds of commercial activities. For example, there are some successes of services activities, like, for example, the supermarket style in the US, 7 or others. These are traditional. We could have better because of the consumption rate and the diversity that we're having in the kingdom. It is like a continental. The number of supermarkets starting with this sector, we can have new patterns of franchise in our country. Also, there are a lot of other successes that we can enumerate, like and supermarkets. For example, we can follow that pattern. And also, we can mention some other bigger companies related to supplies and good products. Also, laundries to have franchises and other services, the services shops, the fuel stations, gas stations, and providing the rules and regulations for it. The Saudi market needs more examples. As for the international examples, we all know them, and we all know how they started. For example, we can mention two, like I mentioned, maybe for example, McDonald's and Starbucks. Look at how only those brands are existing, how strong they are through the franchising process they follow. The Saudi market is a promising one from all parties. The youth is willing, and we have seen that And I would like to say it proudly that those who recently started in terms of the brands and the business will be more successful than those who they will be more successful than big emperors of brands who are very spreading all over the country. New businessmen have more flexibility, and we have seen many brands that were offered through franchise or through the capital market. So I'd like to mention again that our market is promising, and we will be witnessing more and more franchise in the coming periods. Thank you so much. I think you mentioned critical points, and maybe there are in the hidden line a lot of opportunities for young men, like in entertainment, sport, and many other sectors that represent good opportunities for young men and women to participate in. And I think the market is full of many potentials. Now with Mr. Ibrahim Rashid, the head of development bank, Abu Hamad, would you like to please talk about the franchise product and the challenges that it's facing and the future vision of the bank in this regard?
الله يعافيك.
Thank you very much.
البنك يقدم مجموعة
The bank provides
لو أعطيت نبذة
products
سريعة
currently.
خاصة بالامتياز
So,
بشكل
quickly speaking, or briefly speaking, in order to achieve the franchise now, the bank provides the macro financing starting with 60,000 riyals up to 4 million riyals, going to 10 million riyals for the existing businesses that need expansion. The franchise system is one of the startup scope that can have funding up to 4 million. We have a condition that the applicant is no less than 21 years old, no previous bad experiences in business. For example, an agreement that is signed with the franchisor. Based on these conditions, the bank will start quickly the journey to see if the client needs more support in terms of establishing and furnishing the office or the shop or the place, provide them support to Unlani Center or to our partners in Monshaat. We also coordinate with the franchisor to make sure that they know all the things to be able to start. If the client is ready, they will immediately start the process of credit procedures, requesting the financing and receiving it. These procedures take from 2 to 3 weeks based on the readiness of the client and the readiness of the partial guarantees that they provide. I'd like also to remind you that the commercial banks and financing companies are much interested with the financing of small existing or medium or big companies. But for the emerging startups, I think they usually go to investors or the venture investors or the social development fund, given that it is the only source of funding for startups. As for the grant, we negotiated, we started a lot of negotiations with them and integrated experience with more than 40 brands. We accommodated their concerns and their aspirations. The last one of them was one of the national furniture companies, which that they have a number of factories, but they do have a challenge in terms of reaching regions. So they wish that they have a brand, and this brand will be related to the shops in all of the areas, all of the regions, and they will focus on the design, the production itself. This is opportunity for the franchisor is a good opportunity. It is an we work with them, we ask for their guarantees to support the franchisees and small investors, and we launch this product. And the same happens to many other products. So currently, one of the negative points that were mentioned by Mr. Majid quickly is that we want young men and women to diversify the franchise product. Now it is only focused on food and beverages, coffee shops, and I think that this sector has more than enough, and with time the competitiveness will be more difficult. It's a good sector, but excellence in this sector is a big challenge for investment. 70% of applicants now and financiers and those who are being financed are in this sector. So we hope that they will be more successful and expand in other sectors that are different uh, in other sectors like services or different services sectors. We also think that as soon as the brand is ready, the business is ready, and 2 years have gone, they will be eligible for additional financing from our bank to expand. Also, the bank for 2 years visits regularly this uh, business every 3 months to make sure that this product, this franchise is working well and that there is alignment in this process. It is a good opportunity for the system, and there is no doubt that it will be a sophisticated business model, but it is a key, a huge key for the big companies. It is also milestone of big economies, and it is that is that goes in well, that goes in line with the current vision 2030 of our country. So I'd like to congratulate you for this initiative, and I hope that we repeat this event regularly with Monshaat, with chambers of commerce, with the ministries, because this is very important. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim. You have mentioned many important points regarding this event that is targeting two tracks. First, those seeking an opportunity in franchise, we have two tracks for them. So franchisers and franchisees. There is a good example, a simple example. One of the applicants had a commercial business or a business activity that uh, started 3 years ago, and he faced uh, financial problems. And within 3 years, he started the franchise. The value of his franchise was worth 7 million riyals in 3 years. So I would like to start with Mr. Majid again. If you'd like to tell us about the current regulations and that help intensify and provide incentives for franchise. What are the pros and cons of the current franchise sector? We go back to the history of the franchise system in the kingdom. The law was only through the Ministry of Commerce for the brand laws, and there was no separation. So before the Monshaat Authority and the development laws and the vision, in the past, it was like this. But things develop now. There is a supporting, organizing, specialized committee that provide or entity that provide a lot of services. The laws that we have now, maybe those who are willing to receive franchise can go through Monshaat platform to apply. The laws and regulations are clear for all, and maybe from the side of Monshaat, we lean more towards the side of the franchisees to protect them, and these were some of the notices that we received. But our colleagues in the franchise center work to match between the two sides to help both sides in order to protect the rights of both. So there are current systems, and the laws are there. They are self-developing, and our colleagues in Monshaat develop based on the importance of franchise in other countries, and we are following what happens and what are the updates. The franchise center provides a lot of services for people who don't have any experience on franchise through training and through mandate, specialized training companies. Also, the franchise center provides for companies listing and for the owners of brands and successful activities. It provides them with full support, advisory, and financial support to be in charge of the transformation of the brand or the activity into franchise. So all the incentives are there. We launch through the platform. It is we're glad to receive any remark or any feedback that would support the development of the franchise system. Our colleagues in the franchise sector, there are also specialized companies to help mediate between the two sides, the franchisor and the franchisee, so that through our experiences or through reviewing many of the experiences of our colleagues, they sometimes worry that when a franchise is provided to people without experience, they will need a lot of time to be trained, and some companies depend on the same management they have in operation and in support to provide the franchise. And I think this is wrong. The good practice is that if you want to provide a franchise and you need to have a fully dedicated department for franchise, do not depend on the current management and do not view the franchisee as one of your brands. This things will be different and the project may not be successful. So our advice for all the company, you need to dedicate an entity or a department for monitoring and operating the branch of your work. So that's why we're working with our franchise center to attract companies that will work as a mediator between the two sides in the franchising system. So laws and regulations are clear. As I mentioned, laws and regulations are now, as I said, to protect the rights of both sides, even if it is leaning more to the sides of the franchisee, given that they will have a lot of risk. And laws are always developing in what happens related to what happens in the market. Thank you very much, Mr. Majid. Maybe you mentioned very important points. One of them is that there are challenges facing youth and receiving the franchise, and maybe there is an inquiry that will arise after listening to Mr. Ibrahim regarding that important theme. What are the recommendations or suggestions that the bank can provide in terms of the franchise system or for the franchise sector? The franchise, given that there is an indirect relation, and the franchisee, the young men and women, do not possess all of the decisions, then the process will be more complicated in terms of readiness. This makes it not attractive, in my opinion, for the businessmen or from the applicants, young men and women, because they, in order to be assured with this model of business. For the first level, the level of businessmen, I don't think that they have a real problem in awareness. They are really aware of its importance. This kind of business activity, time is enough to give them confidence, to be able to trust and to depend on other parties to, for their production to reach other places and to provide their services. They also are in need for laws and regulations that will provide them with the base legal and grounds in order to start. As for the organization and laws, we know that years ago we started this qualitative chart after issuance of the law of franchise and after the franchise law regulations were issued as well. So we are now have this opportunity to identify these legal enablers for the businessmen to assure them that this process is governed and represents a mutual success between the businessman who wants to grow, who wants to invest their experiences on a bigger scale regarding the challenges and delegating the other smaller challenges to the franchisees. We also think that with the current expansion and the activities and the bigger growing trust in the chambers of commerce and governmental entities regarding this system, the businessmen will be more enthusiastic, believing that these risks are worthy of being paid and to be really clearer with time. And we have seen that 79 entrepreneurs took these opportunities and dealt with other businessmen, and the success rates were good. Realistically, and according to our statistics and the number of risks, the risk rate is not more than 10% if the agreement is governed well and if the franchisor commits to providing services and monitoring in a good way as well as marketing for the franchisee. As for the those who receive the franchisee, I think that in fact regarding entrepreneurship, there is a fact. The fact we need to believe in, whether we like it or not. The fact is that of startups emerge leave the market from the third year, and this is an international in some economies more than 70%. So it's no secret that commercial banks do not provide any kind of support or financing for this kind of startups because of the high risk. Usually they are under the fund of venture capital, more than 10 processes, only one will cover the losses. So I'd like to tell young men and women who are ambitious, especially those who don't have a business model they believe in and they are enabled in. I think that the franchise is a good solution that deserves to be taken seriously and to cover these new activities provided by us, by Monshaat, by chambers of commerce, to deep, deep dive in the details, and we will believe that they will find a big amount of readiness in terms of starting new startups for the franchisees, providing them with the business model, providing them with support in the first years, and also the entrepreneurs, men or women, will not face any problem regarding trusting that product or service, given that it is already linked to a big company that is existing and protected, and need for expansion. So here comes the first point related to challenges. We need to work in order to make the relation an integrational one. So if it's not profitable for both parties, it will face future problems. Also, dealing with the economic weakness points that may happen and the cash flow problems, the weakness of products, continuous awareness, ongoing development of the brand, in addition to other things that are done by big companies. This is very important, and it needs to be guaranteed for the franchisees, for the young men and women, because in the first years they will be in need for all kinds of support. This model, despite of all of these difficulties, is still good and attractive. And I think that based on the current nationalization and Saudization, it is difficult for big companies to keep depending on cheap labor laborers and to develop their work in all these. For example, 79 contracts is that we signed are in 9 regions, except for big companies or large companies that have the solvency to reach different geographical areas. But other big companies or medium companies, I think that they are in and they will have good feasibility in terms of using that system or that model. And given that I'm from the governmental sector, I'd like to confirm that the whole sector is keen on providing support for this profile. And through my membership in منشآت board and other committees, the Masjid al-Qasabi, His Excellency the Minister, and the Minister of Human Resources and other ministries, they were always supporting, and they do believe from the private sector, they do believe in the importance of guaranteeing that this regulation will be legally framed in a good way to protect the rights of all parties. Thank you very much, Mohammed Mr. Ibrahim. I have a quick example through Dillany Center, which is one of the streams of development fund. One of the young men who participated a while ago, he was looking for starting a brand, and one of the things that he was looking for, we told him, why don't you find one successful brand in Riyadh, because he was from outside of Riyadh, a long distance from Riyadh. So he looked for a good brand in Riyadh, and he started the franchise in that region, and he gained revenue. In 2 years, he had net profits of 1 million in the second year. So, and this gave a lot of positive impact. It was a ready business model, and it was available. And he came for the second time, and he said, "Can I have another brand?" He said, "It's better that you expand." So he expanded in another area. I'd like to go to refer to Mr. Majid. We only have maybe 10 minutes left. Do you have any directives or remarks or directions? You're the chair of the chair board, and you are the chair of the committee of franchise at Monshaat. Because I'm still in the chamber, I am still wearing the hat of the Chamber of Commerce. Regarding your directions or especially for young men and women in the field of franchise, what would you like to advise them to do in terms of the system of franchise and its sector? As mentioned, we would like to not only focus on successful stories, because honestly speaking, most of the startups that failed and did not succeed was because of imitation and copying. If something is successful, they copy and imitate. A successful food truck, they copy it. 1,000 food trucks. So we need to go to be far from. We think we need to stand out from the crowd. Something important that I mentioned in many events, that our role is to encourage franchise, but also, as mentioned, through Dullani or through our colleagues in the Monshaat Authority and the Development Fund, that supply is important. The supply market is a big market, it's huge. So the coffee shops or the restaurant, not only the restaurant or the outlet, there is what the supply chain before it. The supply sector is very important. So we need also to focus on the supply. The supply is important. Many of the food materials, consumption materials are important. Also, I'd like to say that we don't want to start immediately. We need to endure, to preserve, to apply to work in a company that is existing as if I'm in a scholarship. We need to study, to work there for 1 or 2 years in order to be able to think of work to avoid many risks. Also, we don't want to say that we are successful. Success is guaranteed with the will of God, but it needs some enablers. I think that the environment now is more attractive, more flexible, young men and women are different from different old generations. They are now aware, knowledgeable, they are experienced, but also they need to take things slow in the beginning, to receive advice, to seek consultancy. And according to the plans and the numbers we hear from different agencies in terms of new registries, new commercial registers, for example, the Chamber of Commerce and the Ministry of Commerce provided grants. And all of these are incentives that make us optimistic for the market.
يعطيك العافية أستاذ ماجد ما قصرت.
Thank you very much.
العفو يا أستاذ إبراهيم.
Now, with
إذا في كلمة
Ibrahim Muhammad, if you have any
في
word
قطاع منظومة
the
الامتياز
youth
تفضل عمرك.
in the field of the franchise sector, there are a lot of points that we may mention, but the most important of them in the bank, for the bank, are, for example, if the young man or woman are ambitious, they don't have the enough capital, I think they should start with the macro startup through the franchise. After that, they can transform it into a startup. Financing for micro franchising, I think it is a good opportunity for developing reward. So we have good work in this track. Last year, we financed more than 80,000 young men and women in the freelance work. And yesterday, we celebrated 250,000 license for productive families. These families, most of them innovate and work on their own products, and in most of the cases, they imitate, as mentioned by Mr. Majid. They copy others. They are in a desperate need for taking in consideration the micro franchising as well. Micro franchising is important, and this is a big field, a big area, and I'm sure that our colleagues are aware of it. And we see it now in the malls when the small chaos that we see in the corners of restaurants or even inside the mall. It is easy for a girl to start her accessories shop or booth. It is only required for her to be a good marketer to accommodate the needs of the client and to communicate these needs to the bigger company. At the end of the day, it's 2 by 3 meters or 2 by 2 meters booth. At the end of the day, easily they can move to another bigger shop at the corner with time and things to grow. Micro franchising is a very good solution. And this year we also monitored for maybe more than 3.5 million are reserved for micro franchising. And we have up to 60,000, sometimes it can be more, for micro franchising. So, as I said, it can reach 300,000 or 4 million according to the size of the project. Graduality in the size of project is important, and I think this is a very important topic. For example, in terms of a complicated model, how can it be simple? We all, as consumers, we suffer from real estate marketing. Citizens or residents, when trying to find an accommodation unit, they suffer from having to go to shops, and every shop has its own story. Real estate shop, they have different practices. There is a big problem in transparency. There is no standard procedures or database. Big companies are not there, and there are few. The companies that may be held accountable in terms of real estate marketing with a big market like Saudi Arabia. We signed an agreement with the government of the real estate authority, aiming to asking why these small real estate, why these real estate shops, why can't they be franchisors? They can accommodate the procedures of the franchisor company, and they can market. At the end of the day, even if the agreements of everything are not much, the management of the building. It can also be a big support for their work. But at the end of the day, the young man and woman will have a business model that
في امريكا في الدول الاوروبيه انه
in the
الشركات
European countries, big companies in the field of real estate, marketing, and services, most of them are franchising. And in all of the corners, they are there and they are supported by computer and professional practices. What I'd like to say is that small business grows with time, and we also need to have more integration with businessmen, more integration with them in order to inform them of the facilitations that are provided to them, and our facilitations that are provided to young men and women to be more confident to apply and commit to the conditions. And we, with the efforts and the incentives provided, the future will be bright. Very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim and Mr. Majid. Our meeting today is rich, and I think there are two main aspects that I have that I've known from this point, that acquiring skill is very important. Mr. Majid mentioned that young men and women, they want to, if they are interested in the industry or sector, they need to join it, to train, even if the salary is not much. As if you are in a university, we always tell young men and women to join any kind of sector like education, expensive education, any company education, be an employee there to acquire the experience. In restaurants, the same thing. Some young men and women want to start, but they don't have the experience or the skill in operational management. Another thing that was mentioned, Ibrahim, is that micro franchising is it's a very good opportunity provided by the bank, and the volume of support that the bank can provide is huge, and it can open new opportunities for more young men and women to join this industry. In conclusion, Mr. Majid and Mr. Ibrahim, if you'd like to give us a short message in the conclusion of this meeting, thanking you for your fruitful presentation. Mr. Majid, if you have one last point, after that, Mr. Ibrahim. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Mansour. I'd like to thank all those who participated, Engineer Saleh, Mr. Rashid, in this fruitful presentation, and we hope that it will be beneficial for all. In fact, I'd like to admit that I have been dazzled with the volume of work that we have to do. I wouldn't say that I was dazzled, but it's because I didn't have much information. We are not communicating well as a society. We need more to be seriously knowledgeable of the pros and the positives and the enablers that are already existing. You can go to Monshaat in the Riyadh front area. You will find successful, excellent examples of services that are developed from A to Z. I advise you all to go to them to know more about not only franchise but different SME. The franchise center holds other attractive markets. I advise the young men and women to be aware of these different platforms, to know more about their services. Soon, the franchise center will be present through the franchise exhibition in Paris in order to benefit from the international presence. Thank you, Mr. Mansour, and thank you all organizers. Thank you very much. One last message that you direct to very much regarding those who are willing to join the franchise sector. Thank you very much. We are keen on guaranteeing that the bank's financing will achieve its goal the young men and women, when they open a franchise, or a business, they will be independent financially with time. They will create economy or jobs. And I think the bank today, through providing these kinds of financing from micro franchising, starting with 60,000 up to 4 million for new startups, up to 10 million for existing companies. The bank provides that with an independent support from Dullany and the bank partners, and also the bank, as well as the bank partners in Monshaat, in order to guarantee that the young man and woman will be successful. Franchise is very important, very successful. Risks are less than others. After it's complete, we will help applicants do that. I invite applicants, young men and women, make sure that they have visited the interactive market. The bank is there, the brands are there as well, mentioned on the active market, and I hope that this event will be a good opportunity for consolidating and doubling our efforts. And in the bank, we make sure that our interaction will be doubled with the businessmen to provide them with information about our services and what the bank can provide in order to guarantee the prosperity of their businesses through the franchise system and through other means of services that we provide with the bank with other governmental funds to support their work. Thank you very much for your meeting. That is very important, and I hope that it will be repeated again. Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. Thank you, Mr. Najma. I'd like to thank His Excellency the Governor of Monshaat, Salah Rashid. I'd like to thank the committee represented by Brother Majid, and I'd like to also thank the franchise center at Monshaat. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everybody. I had the honor of being with you tonight, and I hope to meet again in future meetings. And we hope that you enjoy the interactive market starting from today and tomorrow, and to benefit from the different opportunities provided by the bank. Thank you very much, and happy New Year and the occasion of the National Day next week. Thank you very much, and